Brothers and sisters, if this message has reached you, it is not a coincidence. Heaven is not wrong. There are warnings that aren't announced on television or in newspapers. They are communicated silently, deep within the soul. There are dates that the sky marks, and there are days that shake humanity. October 20th will not be an ordinary day, and although many will close their eyes to avoid seeing it, nothing can stop what is written. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine the night sky, calm, motionless, and suddenly a light that does not come from the earth, a light that cuts the silence, a light that doesn't ask if you're ready, it just arrives. This is not a story made up to cause fear. It is a spiritual alert that millions have felt in dreams, in visions, in deep prayers. Mary, the mother of Jesus, has warned for years that signs would come from heaven, and when those signs appeared, it would be time to open the eyes of the soul. Many have felt a strange weight on their hearts in recent months, as if something big was approaching, as if the world, without saying it, held its breath. Have you felt it too? If your heart has felt this restlessness, you are not alone. Thousands of brothers and sisters around the world feel the same invisible vibration. And so right now, I ask you for something very simple, yet profoundly powerful. Now write the word Amen in the comments. It's not through this channel. It's not because of me. It is an act of faith, a silent cry that rises to heaven and says, I am here. I am not afraid. When heaven calls, it does not do so with shouts. He does it with signs, with winds that change direction, with restless animals, with people who, without knowing why, wake up in the middle of the night with a feeling that is impossible to explain. And all of this is happening now. Mary has said in repeated apparitions, when you see signs of light that do not come from man, you will know that heaven is speaking. Fatima, Lourdes, Medjugorje, Garabandal, all these apparitions have an invisible thread that connects them. Heaven always warns before acting, and today that warning doesn't come to scare you, but to prepare you. On October 20th, a sign will come from heaven. Some will call it a meteor. Others will say it's a cosmic coincidence. But those who have faith will know in their hearts that it is not just a piece of rock traveling through space. It is a spiritual calling, a trumpet without sound, but that makes the soul tremble. Brother, sister, do not ignore this call. Don't turn off that inner voice that says, get ready. It's not paranoia, it's no exaggeration. It is your soul perceiving what many refuse to see. Now, write in the comments, I'm ready, because when you declare that publicly, you are not alone. Thousands will read your message and find courage to not be afraid. Remember, heaven always chooses its silent messengers. They are not the powerful nor the famous. They are the simple souls, those who pray, those who wait in silence. And if you're here, listening to these words, you're one of them. Imagine the earth in silence. Imagine the heavens opening up with an unexpected flash. Imagine that in the midst of that light, your faith burns brighter than ever. That is what the enemy fears, a spiritually awakened people. This first call is not to panic. It is to light your inner lamp. Like the wise virgins who waited for their husband in the darkness of the night, you must have your lamp lit when the sign appears in the sky. Repeat after me in a low voice, Virgin Mary, open my spiritual eyes. I don't want to live asleep. I want to be awake. When you speak, this is not the end of the message. It's just the beginning. Heaven has not said the last word. And in the next few minutes, you'll understand why October 20th has been marked with an invisible seal that very few can see. If you feel this touches your heart, please write in the comments, I'm awake. Because watching is not being afraid, is being awake when others are asleep. Time doesn't stop. The countdown has begun. And you've been warned. There are days that pass and are forgotten, like just another page on a calendar. But there are others that remain etched in the memories of people, in the whispers of those who pray, and in the history of mankind. October 20th won't be just another day. It won't be just another rumor amidst the noise. It will be an invisible dot marked in the sky, like a sign written by the hand of God. Many wonder why this date is stirring unrest in hearts. Some feel inner tremors, others dream of bright lights, and still others simply can't sleep like before. There's a profound reason for this. Heaven doesn't play with timing. Every sign has its time, and every warning has its purpose. It's no coincidence that so many souls simultaneously feel that something is about to happen. For centuries, the Holy Scriptures have spoken of signs in the heavens. There will be signs in the sun, in the moon, and in the stars, and on the earth distress of nations, perplexed, the sea and the waves roaring. Luke 21:25. These words are not poetic flourish. They are a real warning. When the prophets spoke, they did so because they knew that heaven does not warn in vain. And when the Virgin Mary speaks in our times, she does so with the same urgency. Many will not understand what October 20th represents. They will say it's just another day. But for those who have faith, it will be a clear sign. The veil between heaven and earth will move, not visibly for everyone, but perceptible to those who know how to listen with their soul. A meteor will cross the firmament. Scientists will explain it with calculations. Skeptics will see it as a passing spectacle, but the children of faith will feel that it was not a mere coincidence. Think of how many times heaven has spoken through nature. Before every great spiritual event, there was a sign, a star, a tremor, a light. That was the case when Jesus was born. That was the case when Our Lady appeared at Fatima, and that will be the case in this time as well. Signs don't come to entertain, but to awaken. It is important to understand that this date is not merely a physical cataclysm. It is a spiritual event, a point in time when heaven seeks to touch slumbering hearts. God does not send warnings to cause terror, but to call his children to conversion and awakening. The Virgin Mary, in numerous messages, has repeated, "Before the difficult days, heaven will give visible signs to those who have eyes to see and ears to hear." There are those who have long felt that something is approaching. They can't explain it, but their soul senses it. And you who are listening to this may be one of them. Don't ignore that feeling. Don't turn off the inner voice that says, "Wake up." This call isn't meant to provoke fear. It's meant to prepare your spirit. The date isn't a number. It's a calling. Now write in the comments, "I'm awake." You're not doing this for this channel. You're doing it to seal your soul with a declaration. Every word written in the midst of this warning carries spiritual weight. It's like looking up and saying, "I'm not asleep, I won't be caught unaware." When the sky marks a date, there's no erasing it. You can deny it, you can laugh it off, you can try to ignore it, but its echo remains. October 20th will resonate not only in the sky, but also in attentive hearts, like an invisible clock that ticks, like a whisper that cannot be silenced. In times past, many ignored the signs. They didn't believe until it was too late. But there were also small groups who listened, who prayed, who prepared in silence. They weren't the strongest or the wisest. They were those who kept their faith burning. If you're here hearing these words, perhaps heaven has decided to include you among those few. Think about what it means to be prepared. It's not about running or hiding. It's about keeping your lamp lit, your heart at peace, and knowing you're not alone. Thousands of people around the world are feeling the same thing you're feeling right now, and when the sign appears, you'll know it wasn't your imagination. The Virgin Mary has repeatedly said that her messages are not meant to cause panic, but rather to gather her children under her mantle. Every authentic prophecy is an act of love, not fear. Therefore, October 20th should not be seen as an end, but as a calling. Now write in the comments, "I'm not afraid," because fear is the tool of those who disbelieve. Faith, on the other hand, is the lamp of those who watch. Time marches on and never stops. The hours wait. Every day brings us closer to that date marked in the sky. Some will continue their lives as if nothing had happened. Others will light their inner lamp and remain awake. The question is, which side will you be on? Remember, heaven doesn't warn you in vain. Every word you hear today, every feeling you feel inside, is part of a greater plan. Don't take it lightly. Don't harden your heart. October 20th will be remembered not for what the news reports say, but for what awakened souls feel. The countdown has already begun, And you now know that this date is sealed in heaven. There are warnings that are not heard with the ears, but with the soul. They don't need sirens. They don't broadcast on television. They don't wear uniforms or make political speeches. They simply appear soft but firm, like a breeze passing through the heart. This is how the sky announces what is to come in silence. Before every great spiritual event, there is a voice that comes forward. It is not a human voice, but an inner vibration that few know how to recognize. Not everyone hears it, because not everyone is awake, but those who watch, those who pray in silence, clearly perceive that something is approaching. Over the past few weeks, thousands of people around the world have shared similar experiences. Sudden awakenings in the middle of the night, dreams with bright lights, a feeling of spiritual urgency with no logical explanation. Many remain silent because they fear being thought of as crazy, but those who know the messages of the Virgin Mary know that this is the way heaven prepares its people, without fanfare, without spectacle, with gentle but firm signs. This is what happened before Fatima. This is what happened before Medjugorje. This is what happens now. October 20th is approaching, and while for many it will be just another day, for awakened souls, it will be a date that confirms what they have been feeling for some time. A meteor will cross the skies. For science, it will be an explainable phenomenon. For the indifferent, it will be just a passing flash. But for those who listen to this inner voice, it will be confirmation that heaven first spoke in silence. There are those who ask, why doesn't God speak louder so that everyone will believe? The answer is simple: because faith is not born from noise, but from silence. God speaks in the intimate, and only those who want to listen open their hearts. The Virgin Mary doesn't impose her voice. She whispers, and that whisper is more powerful than any human scream. Perhaps you yourself have felt that voice. Maybe you didn't call it that. Maybe you felt it as a feeling of foreboding, a discomfort, a weight on your chest, a call to pray more, without knowing why. That is no coincidence. It is a preparation. Many people these days have seen the sky differently. They look at the stars with different attention. They feel that the air has something it didn't have before. That's also a sign. It's not about superstition. It's about spiritual sensitivity. If you have felt this inside, write in the comments, I have heard the voice. And that phrase isn't an ornament. It's a spiritual statement. When you write it, you are acknowledging that you are not indifferent, that you have perceived what others have not yet seen. Do not ignore gentle warnings. Heaven is not in the habit of shouting at those who have closed their hearts, but it does whisper to those who still have faith. And if you're here listening to these words, it's because somehow, deep inside you, you've already heard that whisper. When the Virgin appeared in Fatima, it was not before crowds. He went to 3 children who were praying in silence. When the angel spoke to Mary, he did so in a quiet corner, without witnesses. When God called Samuel, he did so at night, when everyone was asleep. Heaven has always spoken like this, in silence, in the hidden, in the intimate. October 20th will not be remembered for a voice descending from the heavens with thunder. It will be remembered by those who knew how to listen before the sign manifested. He will be remembered by those who didn't wait for a show, but opened their hearts when no one else would. Some will continue to ignore, others will laugh. But there will also be those who, seeing the sign crossing the sky, will remember this voice they now hear in silence, and they will know that heaven always speaks first to those who are watching. Preparation does not begin when the meteor appears. The preparation begins now. This is the moment you decide whether you will continue sleeping or stay awake. Write in the comments, I am awake and listening. Every word written here has the value of a testimony. And when the night of October 20th arrives, thousands of people around the world will have left this same statement as witnesses that the heavenly voice was heard before the thunderous sound. Don't be confused by the noises of the world. Television screams, politics divides, confusion deafens. But in the midst of all this, God's voice remains the same, clear, serene, silent, and only those who want to listen hear it. October 20th is approaching. The sign will be visible, but the call, for those who have faith, began a long time ago. This is the time to tune your inner ear, turn off the outside noise, and say firmly, "Lord, here I am. I have heard your voice." And when the sky lights up, you will not be afraid, because you will have already been warned in the silence. Amid the confusion that grew like an invisible wave, something began to change in the hearts of millions of people. What began as a scientific announcement became a spiritual call. The initial fear that paralyzed many began to transform into a profound search. The streets were no longer the same. Once indifferent faces now looked to the sky with tears, with questions, with silent pleas. There was an atmosphere that was not just one of fear, it was one of awakening. When news networks confirmed the meteor's trajectory and its imminent approach on October 20th, churches, shrines, and chapels began to fill. People who hadn't prayed in years knelt. Entire families that had once argued over trivial matters now hugged tightly. Estranged friends called out to each other between sobs. It wasn't just a cosmic threat. It was as if humanity, for the first time in decades, felt the profound echo of its fragility. In every corner of the world, voices began to rise to heaven. Languages, creeds, or borders mattered. It was a common cry, a collective plea emerging from the darkest corners of despair. Churches lit candles tirelessly. Entire groups gathered in plazas, on mountains, coasts, and deserts. Many said, "If this is the end, let it find us on our knees, looking up to heaven." And amid this widespread outcry, some began to testify to things that shook the population even more. People claimed to have had prophetic dreams, visions of light, warnings in the stillness of the early morning. Stories of luminous figures, of soft voices saying, "Do not be afraid, prepare yourselves," multiplied. These experiences did not go unnoticed. They were shared on social media, newscasts, and live broadcasts, going viral within minutes. Millions began to wonder if it was just a coincidence, or if something bigger was happening. In some places, spiritual leaders spoke with a power they had never had before. Preachers, priests, and pastors proclaimed that this time was not only one of destruction, but also of grace. God is not absent. Heaven has not closed its doors. There is still hope, they firmly repeated. The atmosphere was intense. Tears and faith mingled with the uncertainty of the final days before the appointed date. While governments discussed how to protect entire cities and scientists displayed maps of impact zones, people spoke of prayer, conversion, and forgiveness. Many began to confess their mistakes, seek reconciliation, and embrace those they had hurt. It was as if the collective soul of humanity had awakened from a long slumber. The meteor was no longer just a physical threat. It had become a mirror that revealed each person's inner truth. In villages and major cities, the sounds of sirens mingled with religious chants. Spontaneous processions marched down main avenues. Mothers raised their hands to heaven, praying for their children. Men living in excess and pride knelt with their faces to the ground. In many live broadcasts, phrases could be heard repeated over and over again. "Forgive us, Lord. Have mercy on us." This massive outcry had a profound effect. It broke down the invisible walls of pride that had so long separated peoples and cultures. Ideologies no longer mattered. Wars and political differences no longer mattered. A single fear, a single question, a single cry united everyone. What will become of us? And in that instant, millions began to feel that they were not alone, that the voice raised not only reached the heavens, but that something from the heavens also responded. Some people reported feeling an inexplicable peace amidst the chaos. Others claimed that when they closed their eyes, they heard words they couldn't understand with reason, but which filled their hearts with strength. Science and faith intersected at the same historical moment. News reports showed images of the object approaching Earth, while at the same time, millions of people prayed in unison, creating an invisible wall that seemed to cover the planet. In the silence of the nights leading up to October 20th, many felt that this was not a simple astronomical event. It was a time of decision. It wasn't just a matter of surviving the impact, but of understanding what life had been up to that moment. For some, it was the final judgment. For others, a chance at redemption. For many, it was simply a call not to waste the remaining minutes. The human voices, once so distinct and scattered, were now aligned in a single clamor. And although the meteor continued to advance inexorably toward Earth, something profound had already begun to transform in the history of humanity. Could it be possible that, in the midst of the most feared threat, the strongest faith the world had ever seen was born? Could a single night change the fate of millions of souls? The answers were about to be revealed, and every heartbeat, every prayer, every tear counted. Heaven listened, and the world waited. The hours seemed to lengthen, as if time itself held its breath. 5 days until October 20th, and the entire world had fallen into an eerie silence. It wasn't a physical silence, for the newscasts, sirens, and broadcasts never ceased. It was something deeper, a spiritual silence. It was the sensation that heaven was intently watching every human heartbeat. The telescopes of the major space agencies no longer spoke of probabilities. They spoke of certainty. The rocky object, more than 400 meters in diameter, was moving forward at a speed impossible to stop with current technology. The trajectory hadn't changed. The date hadn't changed. The impact was imminent, and although some governments tried to hide the true scope of the event, no one believed reassuring words anymore. Humanity knew it was facing something beyond any human power. Amidst this panorama, testimonies began to emerge that shook multitudes. People from different nations claimed to have heard the same voice in dreams or while awake. It was a soft, firm voice without any accent, saying, "There is still time, but the time is short. Repent, turn your faces to the Creator." These accounts came not from a few, but from thousands, and the most striking thing was that they all described the same feeling, a profound peace that contrasted with the chaos outside. Meanwhile, in entire cities, emergency sirens sounded more frequently. Military aircraft circled over strategic areas. Entire families fled their homes in search of shelter, even though deep down they knew there was no truly safe place. The impact of a meteor of that size knew no borders or walls. It was as if humanity finally understood how fragile the structures they had believed invincible for decades were, and that's when something happened that no one expected. During the early hours of October 15th, space stations and satellites recorded an inexplicable phenomenon, a 7-minute electromagnetic pause. All transmissions fell completely silent. There were no radio signals, no connection, no data. Just a void, a silence that shook scientists and terrified millions. During those 7 minutes, many reported feeling an intense presence, as if an invisible gaze descended from on high. Some wept without understanding why. Others spontaneously knelt in the middle of their homes. Some shouted God's name, convinced that heaven had just intervened. When the signal returned, the newscasts tried to explain the phenomenon, but there was no convincing technical explanation. The official version spoke of magnetic interference caused by the proximity of the meteor, but people no longer believed technical explanations. They knew something else was going on. Spiritual leaders around the world declared that moment the final warning. They said it was no coincidence. They said heaven had spoken not with words, but with a silence that shook the soul. It was as if God himself had momentarily stopped the noise of the world so that humanity could listen to its own conscience. In the streets, in the churches, and in the homes, the clamor grew. Spontaneous processions began to march along the avenues. Crowds lit candles and marched in silence, without signs, without political slogans, without speeches. Only silence and prayer. It was a gesture repeated in different countries, without any coordination, as if everyone had received the same instruction from on high, and amidst this spiritual wave, messages of hope began to circulate. Not all of them spoke of destruction. Some affirmed that not all was lost. that the final outcome depended not only on the size of the rock, but also on the cry of the human heart. Many recalled ancient prophecies that spoke of a great sign in the heavens that would mark a turning point for all humanity. For some, that moment had arrived. In remote villages, children began to utter phrases that baffled adults. "He is coming. Do not be afraid. Light above." These were words spoken by innocent mouths, in places where no one spoke of prophecies or the end of the world. The recordings were shared on social media and multiplied in a matter of hours. Each testimony further ignited the spiritual fire of a humanity preparing for something it felt inevitable. Governments tried to maintain order, but there was no longer total control. People had stopped trusting political structures. The focus wasn't on presidents, scientists, or armies. It was on God. Churches, regardless of denomination, became meeting points. The sound of thousands of voices praying in unison rose like an invisible wall. As night fell on October 15th, a luminous phenomenon appeared in the skies of several countries. A silent, prolonged white glow illuminated the horizons for more than 10 minutes. It wasn't the meteor. There was no trace of explosions or sound. It was a tranquil light, as if the celestial vault had been lit by an invisible hand. For millions, this wasn't an astronomical event, but a divine sign. Many knelt in the streets. Others raised their hands in tears. The world, for the first time in a long time, wasn't looking down, not at screens, not at everyday problems. It was looking up. And in that simple, almost forgotten act, an unexpected hope was born. October 20th continued to approach, inexorably. The meteor hadn't stopped. Science had no answers, but the human soul had changed. It was no longer an indifferent world. It was a world that was beginning to listen. The signs had been given. The warnings had been sounded. The clock was ticking, and meanwhile, in the silence of the early morning, the sky watched. Something was about to happen, something that would forever mark the history of humanity. October 20th dawned with a strange sky. It was neither stormy nor clear. There was a supernatural stillness, as if even the wind feared to blow. The animals, which normally filled the dawn with their songs, remained silent. The cities didn't wake up with the usual bustle. They woke up with prayers. From very early on, temples of all religions opened their doors and were soon filled. Tense faces, clasped hands, silent tears. The entire planet seemed to have stopped to listen to what was about to happen. The clocks struck midnight on October 20th, and with every passing second, the tension mounted. Space stations broadcast the approaching meteor live. High-resolution images showed the incandescent mass traveling at unimaginable speeds. This wasn't science fiction. This wasn't a rumor. It was real, and every home, every family, every heart knew it. On the news, scientists tried to explain in firm voices what could happen, but behind their calculated words, their expressions betrayed them. They were out of control. No technology existed capable of deflecting a celestial body of that magnitude in such a short time. All they could do was wait. In many parts of the world, people had decided not to hide, not in bunkers, not in makeshift shelters. They took to the streets, the mountains, the open fields. They looked up at the sky as if staring destiny in the face. Some held candles, others held rosaries, others simply held hands in silence. Differences had disappeared. In that instant, all of humanity was one. Social media was saturated. Live streams showed crowds kneeling together in prayer. Hashtags of hope multiplied in every language. No one argued about ideologies, borders, or religions anymore. Everyone knew the time had come. At 05:47 UTC, radars confirmed the meteor's official entry into Earth's atmosphere. A bright line crossed the sky and was visible from almost anywhere on the planet. The air became dense. Many felt a ringing in their ears. Animals began to run in unexpected directions. Plants stirred as if the ground itself was breathing. It was the prelude to something colossal. In coastal areas, the sound of sirens alerted the population. Cities suspended all activity. Military aircraft remained in the air, not to fight, but to observe. The impact, according to calculations, would occur in the ocean, although with global consequences. Even so, no one knew exactly what to expect. The uncertainty was total. But amidst this indescribable tension, something mysterious was also happening. At various points around the planet, people reported seeing a light slowly descending from the sky, independent of the meteor. It wasn't a rocky fragment or an atmospheric reflection. It was a soft, white, almost living light that seemed to float calmly, as if it didn't belong to this world. Those who saw it spoke of a deep warmth in their chests, a peace that defied all fear. Amidst collective prayers, elders began reciting prophetic words passed down through generations. When darkness advances, light will descend first. It was as if something that had remained hidden in the most ancient texts was beginning to be fulfilled before everyone's eyes. At 06:12 UTC, cameras captured the meteor at its closest approach. The light was so intense that it turned night into day for vast areas. There were no shadows, no darkness, just a glare that forced you to close your eyes. People didn't scream, they didn't flee, they remained on their knees. The whole world seemed to hold its breath. In temples and homes, voices rose saying, "Lord, into your hands we entrust our lives." The words echoed forcefully, as if they were the echo of all humanity. And then something unexpected happened. The meteor slowed down minimally, but enough for experts to notice. The graphs showed a change. It was small, but it was real. Scientists couldn't explain it. No known force could slow a body of that mass so precisely. But for millions of people, no technical explanation was needed. What they were witnessing was an intervention, not human, not terrestrial, something beyond all logic. During that moment, which seemed eternal, many testified to having heard a voice within them. It was inaudible to the ears, but clear to the soul. Do not be afraid. These two words resonated in thousands of hearts simultaneously. Language and faith were irrelevant. It was a direct, intimate, and powerful message. At 06:29 UTC, the meteor passed over the Pacific Ocean. An explosion of light filled the sky. Shockwaves were felt on several continents, but the devastation everyone feared never occurred. The impact was real, but something had cushioned the force of the rock before it hit the water. The sea churned, but the mega tsunami that calculations had predicted didn't occur. The damage occurred, but it wasn't the end of the world. Within minutes, the entire planet began to weep, to scream, to sing. Millions of people fell to their knees, not out of terror, but out of gratitude. They had expected destruction, and what they received was mercy. The world had held its breath, and heaven had responded. In the following hours, as the light slowly faded and the sky returned to its natural darkness, official broadcasts confirmed what many already knew in their hearts. Something impossible had happened. What was supposed to be the end of everything had transformed into an unexpected dawn. October 20th was not etched as a day of destruction, but as the day humanity looked to the sky, and the sky listened. But while millions celebrated tearfully, silently in hidden places, some knew that history was not yet over. Another stage had begun, one that would profoundly mark the destiny of all humanity. The dawn of October 21st was like no other. The entire planet was covered in a deep, dense, almost sacred calm. The seismic waves of the impact had been felt across much of the world, but the massive devastation everyone feared had not materialized. There was no global collapse, no cities wiped off the maps. The sea, although disturbed, did not raise the monstrous wave that had been expected. It was as if an invisible hand had cushioned the fury of the rock before it hit Earth. In every coastal area, from America to Asia, from Africa to Europe, millions emerged from their shelters, from the churches, from the streets where they had spent the night praying. The air had a metallic smell, like after a thunderstorm, and the sky still held a faint glow that seemed to come from nowhere. No one spoke out loud. It was as if all of humanity, in unison, was trying to comprehend what it had just experienced. International news broadcasts broadcast shocking images. columns of light reflecting off the Pacific Ocean, smoking debris on the water's surface, birds circling above the point of impact. Satellites confirmed that the force of the impact had been mysteriously reduced by 87%. There was no satisfactory scientific explanation. No calculations could explain how something so gigantic had lost almost all of its power just a few kilometers from the surface. In the space laboratories, scientists repeatedly repeated the word they never thought they'd utter in public: miracle. And although they officially avoided religious claims, the images and numbers left no room for interpretation. What had happened was completely beyond human control. Meanwhile, in every city, churches remained open. People didn't return to their routines immediately. There was no rush. There was no traffic. There were no bustling markets or glowing screens talking about business. Humanity, for the first time in decades, had truly paused. Spontaneous singing, collective prayers, and hugs that hadn't been shared in years could be heard. Neighbors who barely greeted each other shared food, water, and tears. It was as if the hearts of millions had been suddenly softened. In towns and cities, testimonies multiplied. People claimed to have seen a white light descending at the exact moment the meteor approached the ocean. Others claimed to have felt a warmth in their chest, an inexplicable force that drove them to kneel without fear. Hospitals reported something unusual. During the exact minute of impact, cardiac units showed a massive decrease in seizures, as if an invisible blanket had covered thousands of patients at once. Social media, which had been a playground for rumors a few days earlier, was now filled with messages of gratitude. Images of people praying in different languages and cultures flooded every platform. There was no talk of hatred. There was no talk of war. There was only talk of a day when the earth was saved from something impossible. Yet amid all the jubilation and tears of gratitude, difficult questions also arose. What exactly had happened? What force had intervened? Why had humanity been given a second chance? Governments convened conferences. Scientists sought answers, but in the temples the explanation was already on the lips of many. Heaven heard. An additional phenomenon began to puzzle observers. For 48 hours after the impact, mysterious columns of light were reported appearing in various locations around the planet. Rural areas, mountains, deserts, even in regions where there was no electricity or nearby population. They were vertical, silent beams that emitted no heat or interfered with electronic equipment. They had no identifiable source. Some considered them an atmospheric effect, others a spiritual sign. Thousands of people flocked to the places where these columns appeared, driven by a mixture of faith, curiosity, and a deep sense that something was yet to be revealed. Witnesses reported feeling an indescribable peace upon approaching. Some wept for no apparent reason. Others simply remained silent, staring into the light. The Pope, religious leaders, pastors, and rabbis issued joint statements. It was historic. Different religions united in a single message, calling on humanity not to return to the way things were before, not to forget. We have seen the fragility of our existence and also the mercy of heaven. Let us not squander this grace, they said. But not everyone reacted with gratitude. In the shadows, certain powerful groups gathered silently. Some saw in that event not a miracle, but a threat to their control. They knew that a people united by faith, without fear, was more difficult to manipulate. And while the majority celebrated, a few began to plot strategies to regain the narrative and retake the dominance they had lost in just one night. In the following days, recordings of harrowing accounts began to circulate. Pilots claiming to have seen a luminous shape suspended between Earth and the meteor seconds before impact. Satellites captured distorted images that appeared to show a circular glow surrounding the rock. No one could explain it precisely. Humanity had moved from despair to wonder, from wonder to reverence. October 20th would go down in history books as the day the world stood on the brink of ending and was touched by something no one could deny. However, the most profound change wasn't found in the oceans or the sky. It was found in the human heart. Millions began to live with greater awareness. Families that had been torn apart for years were reconciled. Streets that had once been filled with violence were filled with song. People began to talk about purpose, eternity, and meaning, but as faith spread like a silent fire, a new tension was also born. Something many could feel even if they couldn't explain. It was the intuition that this wasn't the end of the story, but the beginning of something bigger. The earth had been saved, yes, but it had also been marked. And what came after that dawn would forever change the course of humanity. The night of October 20th hangs like a veil over humanity. Rumors, news, and visible signs have reached their peak. Science has confirmed that a celestial object of great magnitude will pass through Earth's atmosphere. The networks are flooded with messages. Families pray, cities are silent, and a radiance not seen in generations begins to emerge in the sky. But amidst all this turmoil, there is one force that remains stronger than any threat: faith. As the hours approach midnight, millions of people around the world bend their knees. There are no temples large enough to hold so many gathered souls. Streets have become altars, homes have become sanctuaries, and voices rise to heaven in a unified cry. May God's mercy prevail over judgment. It is here that fear meets true faith face to face. There are no more excuses, no more distractions, only a moment that defines eternity. The city lights flicker. In some areas, the electricity has been cut off. The skies are alight with a golden and reddish glow advancing from the horizon. What hours ago seemed only a warning is now visible to all eyes. And yet, amidst this image that could cause panic, there is a profound silence, as if all of creation were holding its breath, waiting for what is about to happen. In Latin America, where prophetic messages have spread powerfully, families embrace, pray, and cry, not out of despair, but out of surrender. Many raise rosaries, others hold Bibles, others simply close their eyes and say the name of Jesus, because they have understood that this is not just an astronomical event, but a spiritual call that runs through human history. This is not an end without purpose. It is a turning point. Spiritual leaders of different faiths have agreed with one voice: fear has no power where faith reigns. And in that instant, millions recall the words spoken by the prophets, the saints, and the Virgin Mary in various apparitions. Fear nothing, for my immaculate heart will triumph. This phrase, echoed in the hearts of thousands, becomes an invisible shield. The meteor may approach, but the soul that trusts does not tremble, because it has found its refuge. Suddenly, a thunderous roar echoes across the sky. It's as if the heavens were opening with a roar. The luminous object crosses the atmosphere, leaving a fiery trail that illuminates entire continents. Some scream, some run, but there are also those who remain still, hands raised to the sky, because they know there is a power greater than any catastrophe: divine love, which never abandons its children. At that moment, as the meteor continues its trajectory, something unexpected happens. There is no massive destruction, as many feared. Instead of a direct collision, the space rock grazes the atmosphere and fragments, creating a spectacle of light that covers the night sky from north to south. It's as if the entire universe were ignited by a sacred fire, but not consumed. The tears that fall are no longer of panic, but of wonder. It is the sign that the prayer was not in vain. Science will later say that the deviation was unexpected and that the trajectory changed at the last instant. But those who prayed will know deep in their souls that it was no coincidence. It was an answer. It was mercy. It was divine intervention. It was proof that when the human heart unites in crying out, heaven hears. In the hours that follow, the world will never be the same, not because of the destruction, but because of the shared experience of having been on the brink and having seen God's hand hold it back. Many hardened hearts will be touched. Many skeptics will remember this night as the moment they felt something they couldn't explain. Churches will be filled again, families will pray together again, and an entire generation will understand that the power of faith is more real than any threat. This October 20th will be etched in the collective memory not as a day of disaster, but as the day heaven spoke and earth listened. Not everyone will understand immediately, but those who kept the faith will know that it was a purposeful warning, an urgent call to return to God. Because when all seemed lost, prayer opened a path of light. And so, as dawn slowly paints the horizon of a new day, a murmur spreads across the world. We were heard. The bells begin to ring, not out of tragedy but out of gratitude. Hands that once trembled are now raised in worship, because in the decisive hour, fear was overcome by faith. And you, where will you be when the next sign appears in the sky? Will you be one of those who fear or one of those who trust? Because the story doesn't end here. What has happened is only the beginning of a new era, where every heart will be called to decide, darkness or light. When the meteor's light finally went out on the horizon, humanity was never the same. What many believed to be a simple celestial anomaly became a global awakening. Every city, every town, every family that gazed at the burning sky felt an inner vibration, a call that comes not from science or chance, but from something much greater, the voice of heaven whispering to the hearts of men. The night of October 20th will be remembered not only as an astronomical event, but as the opening of a spiritual portal that marks the beginning of a new era for humanity. For hours, millions prayed tirelessly, and although fear tried to infiltrate every corner of the planet, faith stood like an impenetrable wall. This experience has shown that when people turn to God with sincerity, when their hearts surrender themselves without reservation, the entire universe conspires in favor of life and mercy. Eyes that once looked only at material things now begin to perceive signs that transcend physical reality. Lights in the sky that seem like messages, sounds that only attentive hearts can hear, presences that remind us that we are never alone. But there's something few yet understand. This event wasn't a closure, but a beginning, a warning, a reminder, a cry of urgency. Because if humanity continues to ignore the signs, the heavens could send more compelling evidence, not intended to destroy, but to awaken. And those who believe that faith is enough, that prayer is merely routine, must now understand that every word, every gesture of surrender, and every sincere prayer can change the destiny of cities, nations, and entire generations. Today, the world has seen a miracle disguised as a natural phenomenon. Tomorrow, many will feel the unease of knowing that there is something greater watching, guiding, and waiting. The ancient prophecies, the messages of the Virgin, and the warnings of saints and visionaries make sense in ways that are both terrifying and beautiful. We cannot afford indifference. Every heart is a terrain where light or darkness can grow, and the decision is up to each individual. And it's at this point that I want to ask you a direct question. Are you really prepared for what's coming? Because the meteor we saw graze our atmosphere is only the first warning. There are signs that have yet to be revealed, events that could alter our perception of reality as we know it, and forces that seek to exploit human fear to separate the weak from the strong in faith. Time is running out, and those who haven't strengthened their spirit, those who haven't opened their hearts, could face trials that will change their lives forever. But there is hope. The same hope that sustained millions of people during the longest night of their lives, the same hope that illuminated the darkness when all seemed lost, remains alive. That hope is found in prayer, in unity, in the awareness that we are part of a greater plan. Every gesture of love, every prayer, every act of sincere faith is an invisible shield that protects those who remain steadfast, who trust, and who do not allow themselves to be dominated by fear. Today, we understand that the heavens speak to us, that the universe conspires to send us messages we cannot ignore. But we also know that what we have experienced is only the first chapter of a story that will continue, a story where astronomical events, prophetic signs and signals from the invisible intertwine to reveal the deepest truth that humanity is being called to choose, now more than ever, between light and darkness. And this is where this chapter ends. But the story doesn't end here. In the next video, we'll reveal what astronomers and prophets have warned about in the coming months, phenomena that could change the fate of entire continents, and signs that only those who are attentive will be able to interpret correctly. Because the night of October 20th taught us something vital. We cannot look at the sky without understanding that every light, every shadow, and every silence has a purpose. Prepare yourself, because what's coming is much bigger than we imagined. And if you thought the meteor was a surprise, what we'll reveal soon will make everything you've seen so far seem like just the prologue to a truth that humanity cannot ignore. Are you ready to see what heaven has in store for us? Don't close your eyes. Don't look away. The next sign is closer than you think.